Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is Katy Huff with Katy Huff Ministries, and I am so incredibly excited about this podcast today because you know the podcast is called Setting Yourself Free. However, today we know that the beginning of being set free is to have financial literacy and to take control of your finances. And I have the expert, Dr. Kirk Elliott, who is here from out of Denver, who is going to share with us who he is and what he's been doing and what he sees and how we can protect our greatest assets is our finances so we can be good people that have money, get to be even better to those that have a need. So with that, Dr. Elliott, thank you so much for your time. And I'm just grateful and want people to know who you are and how they can obviously reach out to you and learn from you and protect their assets and their finances. And so why don't you just tell them who you are, how you got started, and what's today's day?
Well, thank you so much for that little brief introduction. You know what? Finances are important in everybody's life, right? But what you said, there's one piece that goes before that to set yourself free. And that's if you lack wisdom, then ask God for it because he will give it to you and he'll give it to you abundantly. And that's what we need in today's world is wisdom to make a wise decision with our finances. Because you know what? There's the story, the parable of the talents.
Oh, yeah.
So you had these three servants and the one who did really good with the stuff that God gave him and one who did kind of average. And then the one who was so scared of losing them, buried him in the sand. It's like, I just don't want to lose them, so I'm going to hide him, right?
Yeah.
And what did Jesus say? He said, he didn't call him the dumb servant, called him the wicked servant. That's worse than being dumb, right? So,
That's right.
With everything that God gives us, we are called to be wise stewards with that. And that's one of the goals of what we have here is to help people navigate through the madness that we're seeing, right? And be in the right place at the right time, the majority of the time. That's how we minimize our risk and maximize our return. So little bit about me. I've been doing this for a long time, for like 29 years. And when I
thought you were 35. I thought you were only 35, doctor.
I am. I started when I was like 4, right?
That's awesome. Very good. Well, this is awesome.
Yeah. So I've been doing this for a really long time.
Yeah. It's not your first rodeo. Thank you, Jesus.
No, not my first one. But you know, when I first started, I was just a stockbroker way back in the mid 90s. And you know, the company I was working for, even way back then, I was recommending to like 3% of my clients, you know, just a few of them, hey, you should put like 5% in gold. You know, back then gold was $258 an ounce, right? It's like, it's a great thing to do. Well, they flipped out and they said, no, you can't do that. You're selling away. It's like, wait a second. I'm not selling anything. I'm just telling people that it's like, we don't even offer it. They should get a little bit though. So they gave me a cease and desist. So here's where I had this big question in my life, right? It's like, well, I'll always do what's right for the client, but I also have to honor the company I'm working for. And if the two don't coexist, well, then they're not my provider. God's my provider. So I left. So here's this conversation. I went home and said, hey, Joe's my wife, said, guess what I just did? I'm trying to quit because God's our provider and not this company, because they wouldn't let me do what was right for the client. Wow. So I went to this other company and, you know, it was a precious metals dealer way back in like 2002. And it wasn't all it was cracked up to be. I was going to inherit a book of business to, you know, clients. Well, guess what my book of business was, Katy? It was the phone book. It's like, okay, great. Here we go. So I made 250 phone calls a day for like 3 years. And it's like, but when you have a dream, when you're passionate about something, you're good at it, there's not a hurdle that's too big to overcome, right? So I did it, but it was hard. It was brutal. It's like, I wouldn't wish that on anybody, right? But as I'm going through this, I'm watching CNBC and Jim Cramer's on there just shouting from the rooftops, all kinds of stuff, because he yells all the time. It's like, but people are listening to him about financial news. It's like, how can I get on TV? It's like, I don't have to yell. How can I get on TV? So I thought, okay, I'm going to get a PhD, because the only people that have PhDs are like these Harvard egghead nerds that are talking about policy that everybody falls asleep in the first 2 seconds, right? So it's like, I'm a little more entertaining than that. So I got one. I got one in public policy and administration, focusing on monetary economics. Then I developed a new methodology for measuring inflation for the Bureau of Labor Statistics and central banks, because the way they did it was broken. It doesn't even apply today.
Right.
So, and because I'm a glutton for punishment, I think, if one is good, two might be better, right? So I got a second one in theology. And this is where now the philosophy of our firm and myself, even today, is people over profit. You know, how do theology and economics blend? Well, if you have people over profit, because if you focus on people, profit will come.
That's right.
If you focus on profit, people will leave. Right. So this is now the philosophy of our firm that we're advising people with. And I don't care if you're a politician or a business owner or just a friend, right? If you ever focus on people, profit comes. Profit, you could have it in relationships, you could have it financially, right? But if you ever start focusing on the profit and what you get from it, nobody's going to trust you, right? So,
right.
So this is why we do what we do, right? So what we're gifted at, what God gifted me with, is like putting together all these puzzle pieces of the economy, of the society, of the spiritual climate we're living in, of politics, putting them all together, because then you get a full picture of where we are.
So it's like this holistic approach is what you're doing.
It is a very holistic approach, right? So anyways, that's kind of the backdrop. Now, 20 something years later, well, almost 30, right? We are one of the fastest growing firms in the industry. We're massive, and we really take care of people. And what sets us apart is we focus on the relationship, right? Because most firms, I don't care if it's a stockbroker, realtor, whatever, right? They're transactionally based. They make a commission when you buy, when you sell, and they forget about you in between. Yeah. To me, those transactions are like the necessary evil. You have to buy to get into a trend, you sell to get out of one, but life happens in between the bookends of those transactions. So we hold people's hand through these fragile economies, these dark times that we're living in. And we always let you know when it's time to buy, sell, reallocate, get out of Dodge, do whatever needs to be done, right? But more than that, there's more to life than just transactions. To me, it's all about understanding the why. Why do we do what we do? Because, Katy, you could be in the right place at the right time, but if you don't understand why, you're still going to have financial anxiety. Right. You're still going to be stressed out of your mind. When you go to bed at night, our goal is for you not to be thinking, did I do too much or did I do too little? No, do what's just right for you. The only way you can get to that financial peace is by understanding the why. So every single week, I send out a video email to all of my clients, letting them know what we're seeing politically, economically, socially, spiritually, all of that. Wow. So once you understand the why and you're in the right place at the right time, now we've won. Wow. Now I can put a smile on your face with Holy Spirit guidance, because, you know, it's like, okay, we understand the trends and times that we're living in. We've taken advantage of those trends rather than the trends taking advantage of us. Just because all of our freedoms are eroding, our political freedoms, economic freedoms, religious freedoms, personal freedoms, health freedoms, they're all going the way of the dodo bird, but our finances don't need to go exit with our freedoms. Because all of our freedoms, if we want them back, takes a collective voice, right? It takes us being loud, and hopefully politicians hear us. To take care of your finances, it's one small voice, yours. Doesn't even have to be verbal, right? You just have to decide to do something, and then you can be in the right place at the right time the majority of the time and thrive, because that's what we were created to do. But most people in the world that we're living in right now, like 99% of the people that call me are gripped with fear. Oh yeah. I mean, just listening to you is giving me peace. And peace is the most important thing especially when you're worried about your finances, right? And especially in our economic times that we have. So this is so encouraging, Dr. Kirk, to listen to this. Amen. So when people call and they're gripped with fear, I can hear it. You can hear their voice shaking. They're scared. They don't know what to do. They're afraid their retirements are going to go away. And I get that, right? But we don't have to be afraid. Fear will either paralyze you to inaction, like you stick your head in the sand like an ostrich in a windstorm, and when you pop it back up, you hope the storm is over, or it causes you to make the wrong decision. The good thing about fear is that it's a spirit, and we can kick it out where it belongs, right? Because we were created with sound mind and wisdom and discernment and a spirit of peace, right? And understanding and knowledge. All of that. So we just have to harness that,
Yeah.
kick fear where it belongs. So that's one of our goals, is why I take the time to educate everybody and why we're doing what we're doing, because that will melt away that fear. So let's go fast forward to today, for example. What's going on?
Yeah.
Well, you've got inflation that's persisting. It's going through the roof because we've got policy coming out of DC that's printing money like there's no tomorrow to fund every stimulus program under the sun, raise the debt ceiling, and, you know, paying people to stay home, raising entitlements. It's like, good grief, right? Seriously.
Right.
I mean, all of that's inflation. And when you print money, it creates inflation, right? So
Right.
now the same people that are printing money and creating inflation are the same ones that are coming up with a solution. It's like, hey, we got to raise interest rates to slow down inflation. It's like, wait a second, you're not raising interest rates are not going to fix the issue. It's actually going to make matters worse because you're not stopping the printing of money, right? It's like, so what they're doing is making it worse and worse and worse, because they're going to not stop printing money, because that would stop the economy overnight, because it's stimulus money that's keeping it afloat. So with one hand, they're printing money. With the other hand, they're saying, oh, inflation's bad. We got to slow it down by raising rates. It's like, okay, you sillies, if you would just stop printing money, you wouldn't have to raise rates, right?
Right.
But they're not willing to do the right thing. Politicians are going to not stop printing money, because then nobody wants the economy to fall on their watch. So they keep kicking the can down the road. We're going to keep having inflationary pressures, because this is the model of politics, is let's use other people's money and we'll basically pay for people's votes, you know, by promising all these entitlements and everything else, right? And it's like, or else they're not going to get reelected. So they have to keep kicking that down the road. That's how politics is designed. But there comes a point when you have to pay the piper, right? So now these policies, every investment that we have is going to grow or shrink because of policies coming out of DC. If you look back to the Trump years or the Reagan years, both similar economic policies, lowering taxes, lowering interest rates, and creating jobs. Amazing. When that happens, people spend more money, the stock market booms, and, you know, the economy's growing. But now we've got the opposite. Opposite policies will have an opposite outcome. We've got raising taxes, raising interest rates to slow down inflation that they're creating by printing money out of thin air. And since COVID, they're paying people to stay home rather than creating jobs. 180 degrees opposite. So what worked in the past doesn't work in the present because something changed. So we're navigating through this, right? And so, so here's where you get to some major problems that we're seeing developing that are problems to us, but opportunities for the globalist institutions that are creating them, right? But we can take their opportunities and create an opportunity for us too. So what are they doing? They're the World Economic Forum, the BRICS nations, they're dismantling the economic system as we know it. How are they doing it? The BRICS nations, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, right? They want to be the global monetary economic superpower. Well, they've got a huge military. They've got a big political base with those countries put together. They're trying to become the world's economic superpower by having this consortium of countries, this collection of countries all banded together as one, kind of like the Eurozone, except now the BRICS nations. And they're winning. I mean, they're doing a really good job at it. I hate to say it, but they're doing a good job at dismantling the West's financial power. So number one, how they're doing it is they're pulling in other countries into the BRICS nations. Number one choice is being Saudi Arabia. Because at the World Economic Forum about a month ago, Saudi Arabia told the world, it's like, hey, we're getting rid of the petrodollar. The petrodollar we've had since the 1970s, it's just the US dollar that's used to purchase all oil all over the world. Right. Doesn't matter what country buying from who, they used US dollars to do it. That created built-in demand for our dollar, because even if we weren't doing anything with it, other countries were. So you had to print it to make that happen. So when you've got this built-in demand coming into the US Treasury, well, we have to print more money. So now we squandered our time in the sun, because now we have $32 trillion worth of debt. And Saudi Arabia is saying, wait a second, we want our BRICS nations to be the global monetary superpower, not America. So let's stop taking petrodollars in exchange for oil. So they told the whole world about a month ago, hey, we're going to trade in whatever currency we're trading with. So if we're selling oil to China, we'll take the yuan. If we're selling oil to Europe, we'll take the euro. If we're selling oil to Mexico, we'll take the peso, right? So, and so on and so forth.
Right.
So now there's no built-in demand for our currency, which is a problem, which means we still have expenditures, we still have stimulus, we still have all this stuff, and there's nothing coming in. They just have to print. Well, that amplifies our inflationary pressure. But to really win, they need to dismantle people's faith and confidence in the banking system. They're eroding the dollar. Now they have to erode the banking system. Here we go. This is where we are today with Silicon Valley Bank going under, Silvergate Bank. We've got Signature Bank. And well, how did that happen? Yeah. That all happened because banks don't have enough money. Period. Right. So this is where when people call me, they say, hey, Kirk, we've heard you, we've heard other podcasters, you know, that the stock market's failing, the bond market's failing. We got out of all that. We sold everything and we're sitting in cash. It's like, okay, do you understand how a bank works? Because when you put money in the bank, you're not actually, it's not sitting in cash inside the vault. It's not there. Because if you go back to the summer of 2020, March, actually, during COVID, the Federal Reserve changed how much money banks have to hold on hand through Regulation D. And how much do you think? 0%. Banks don't have to have any money on hand because they tried to stimulate the economy, say, lend out everything, right? So now banks are ripe for a bank run, just like in the movie It's a Wonderful Life. When they went into the bank, it's like, there's nothing there, right? This is where we are right now because of that regulation. So during Biden's stinky economy over the last few years, I mean, it stinks.
Right.
It has nothing to do with politics. It stinks. He's doing bad decisions. So if you look at Silicon Valley Bank, what do? Last year, 44% of all venture capital for tech startups came from Silicon Valley Bank. So these companies were saying, we need money, right? We need equity lines of credit. We were pulling money out because we need it to survive. Well, there wasn't any money there. So that caused a bank run, caused them to go into FDIC receivership, meaning they took over. Well, this morning they went under. They're gone. That was gone, right? So that caused a contagion. That caused other people in other banks think, well, man, if they went under, maybe my bank's going under too. So that's why other banks started to fail. Then last weekend, it spread overseas to Credit Suisse. See, this is a problem because Silicon Valley Bank had 173 billion in assets. Credit Suisse has 1.3 trillion in checking accounts, savings accounts, right? It's like 8 times bigger. So it's like, man, if that goes under, lights out for the global economy. But here comes UBS, bigger than even Credit Suisse, right? And they said, we're going to buy you out. We're going to buy you because we can't afford a failure. That'll cause crisis in every bank. And we're a bank too, and we don't want this to happen. So they paid $3.2 billion to bail out Credit Suisse. Wait a second. That number doesn't add up.
No.
They have $1.3 trillion in deposits. How'd they buy them for $3.2 billion? Either the people at UBS are the smartest negotiators in the world, or they just made the dumbest financial decision ever, right? I'm going with the latter. I think it's the dumbest financial decision ever because Credit Suisse probably has over $1 trillion of debt because other equivalent size banks in America all have over $1 trillion of derivatives debt. So if I were a UBS shareholder, I'd be ticked. It's like, what? You just spent $3.2 billion to buy $1 trillion worth of debt? Are you crazy?
Nuts.
Are you absolutely nuts? Right? So, but they're not necessarily nuts. They needed to stop the banking crisis from spreading even further. So here's where we are today, right? Banking crisis, people's faith and confidence in their banks eroding because banks don't actually have anything. You're dismantling the petrodollar. The system as we know it is about to change towards central bank digital currency, which you have to realize same people who own the banks now are going to own a central bank digital currency, the central banks, right? So they don't care. What central bank digital currency is about is it's not a fix to a broken system. It's complete people control. Because you go back to what Dr. Pippa Malmgren said last summer at the World Government Forum in Abu Dhabi, She said, hey, central bank digital currency is coming. It's a way to where we can monitor your digital social profile. And if we don't like what we see, we'll cut you off from buying or selling. Cut you off from buying or selling. So reminds me of a passage in Revelation. Revelation 13, 16, 17, it says, it also forced all people, great and small, rich and poor, free and slave, to receive a mark on their right hands or their foreheads, so that they could not buy or sell unless they had the mark, right? So man, what's coming?
Right.
See, if you want to control a person, you control what they spend, right? Or how they spend, or the ability to spend. So this has nothing to do with fixing a broken system. It has everything to do with people control. This is the system that's coming our way, right? And so they still need one more piece, right? So they're building out this central bank digital currency, but how do you connect us to that repository of the credits or debit system and all of our money in our digital social profile, which is central bank digital currency? Well, you need an app, right? So that passage is talking about a mark. So if it's on your phone, well, on March 15th, the Federal Reserve Board of Governors came out with a memorandum. They said, hey, we're releasing the Fed Now app. And this is the conduit. This is the tunnel from you and your money to the central bank digital currency. They said it's going to be released in July. It's like, July? But that's to the public. They're releasing it next week, April 3rd, to the large financial institutions to start releasing that in a beta test to all of their clients. And they're begging for smaller financial institutions to all jump on board because they want mass momentum on this. So here's where it's coming. I mean, when I was a kid, or even college, whenever, even 5 years ago, you read through the scriptures, like, how could anybody be so dumb as to like the Antichrist in this mark of the beast system, right? It's like, how could it come? Well, we're seeing it and nobody really cares, right? It's like they're looking at it as convenient and a way to fix a broken system when people can't even get access to their money in the banks because banks are failing, right? It's like people will willingly give up their freedoms in exchange for perceived security and peace. If you create a crisis that's big enough, people will actually want the solution, even though a year ago they said, oh, it's terrible, I'm never going to give up my freedoms. Right. Well, they will. So this is where we are. So how do we successfully navigate through that, right? How do you thrive? Because we can't, in a world where there's no guarantees, we can't, this is my guarantee. So it is that we will have central bank digital currency, guaranteed, because they're way too far down the runway. 90% of all the central banks around the world are jumping onto that system. We will have it. Wow. But whether we keep it or not is up to us. Right? That part's not up to us. When how do you say that, Kirk? Well, it's like, because when the euro became a currency, like 35, 40 years ago, whenever it was, the Germans had to give up their national sovereignty and give up the mark for a euro. The French had to give up the franc. The Italian had to give up the lira. The Dutch, their guilder, right? Did they want to? Well, no. In fact, for a while, they didn't. For 3 to 5 years or so, there was multiple currencies being traded parallel with each other, but eventually they caved. And so then they had the euro, right? Because the politics and people in Europe, they're very peace oriented because they're war torn all the time, and factions, and people hate each other and they're fighting all the time. It's like, ooh, economic peace might mean political peace, right? Let's join this economic union. So they caved. Right. But here in America, this is different. We're not giving up our national sovereignty for a central bank digital currency. We're giving up our individual sovereignty in our right to buy or sell. That's way more passionate. That's way more deep than a national sovereignty, right? Right. So this is where I think the battle intensifies. And what could be solutions? Using silver for barter, a gold-backed dollar, maybe some other cryptocurrency, maybe a quantum financial system. There's a lot of things being floated, but the easy ones, gold-backed dollar, because we've already done that before. Right. We had that up until the 1970s when they abandoned the gold standard altogether, or using silver for barter. Because you're not a digit, you're not some kind of a digital slave in somebody's digital world. When you have a tangible asset that's small and portable that you can use to trade back and forth with merchants if you really wanted to. So that's obviously, for lack of a better explanation, zombie apocalypse world, right? Everything's falling apart. You need silver to barter with to survive. But outside of that, It's an amazing investment. Over the last 3 months, silver's up 28%. Over the last 3 years, silver was $11.91 in May of 2020. Now it's 23. It's up like 95% in 3 years. It's over 30% a year. And when the stock market's collapsing, it's like, man, just take advantage of the trend and grow your portfolio with safety and peace of mind. And if push comes to shove and we get this worst case scenario, you have something to trade and barter with. It's like it checks all the boxes right now. Not always has it been that, and won't be that way in the future. Once we get a president back or a Congress that encourages economic growth, strengthens the economy, creates jobs, lowers taxes, lowers interest rates, well, then maybe the stock market's going to be good again. But until that point, while banks are collapsing, while inflationary pressures are ravaging Americans all in the world, interest rates are going up, which ravages everybody with debt.
Right.
Take advantage of this growth in silver. You can do it through an IRA or a non-IRA asset, right? If you have a retirement account, go into physical silver. I'm not talking about paper. I'm not talking, Katy, about an ETF or a mining share, a mutual fund. That's all paper. I'm talking about physical, tangible silver, 100-ounce bars, 10-ounce bars, 1-ounce rounds, 1-ounce gold bars. Physical assets will be your protection because they're driven by inventory and supply and demand, where other stuff can be manipulated way easier. So that's my solution. Awesome. In this world that we're living in, to bring safety and peace, I would go into physical silver right now.
Okay. Well, that's what I was just going to ask you, is what solutions, and you gave it to us. So I want people to know where to get this. So go to Kirk Elliott, PhD. I'm going to spell it out so you don't miss it. KirkElliott, PhD.com/unmasked. And you will get a great service, because I am supporting Kirk Elliott, PhD, and all that they're doing. I'm going to be calling him. I am going to make an appointment. So I'd encourage everyone to go to the KirkElliottPhD.com/unmasked and make an appointment with Kirk and one of his guys and gals there. They're amazing people. I'm so blessed and so grateful that I was introduced to them, and they are there for us. And just, again, his people over profits should be something that speaks to your heart, and to know that God's got his hand on them, and therefore on us, when we do business with Kirk Elliott, PhD. So is there anything else you would like to say, Dr. Elliott?
You can call me Kirk. Just one real quick thing.
Good.
Just like most of the people that call in, they're gripped and paralyzed with fear. Don't be. There's a solution. That's how I can have a smile on my face and talk about all this nasty stuff, right? Is because there is a solution to provide not just safety, not just preservation, but growth. Really, you can thrive in these markets, be in the right place at the right time. Not everyone's an expert in it. This is what we do, that we are an expert in it. If you want your car fixed, don't call me. I'll break it worse, right? But if it's financially related, this is what we're really good at. This is what my gifting, my calling, my anointing, and my company, everyone that works here is people over profit. Call us. Take that first leap of faith. You might say, well, I've never met Kirk. I don't trust him. I don't trust anybody. But Katy does.
Yes.
So yeah, take that leap of faith and just give us a call. You know what? If you don't want to do something, then don't. You're not going to twist your arm. We're just going to map out a strategy of success for you. And either you want to do it or you don't, right? And so this is our goal in life, is to get you to that point of peace and navigate you through this, because it's not going to go away tomorrow. It's not going to go away anytime real soon. But you know what? Your portfolio and you can thrive during it.
Amen. And that I always go to Philippians 4:6-7. So do not be anxious for anything, but through prayers and petition with thanksgiving, present your requests to God, and the peace of mind that transcends all understanding is going to protect our heart and minds. And by going to the experts that know what's going on at Kirk Elliott, PhD, you are going to have peace of mind that will guard your heart and mind. And for you to follow Katy Huff Ministries on YouTube and subscribe, and we are on Facebook, and we are on Instagram and Twitter, and check out my book, my courses, my retreats. but I am just so grateful and thankful that Dr. Kirk Elliott was here, and I'm grateful that my friends and family and anyone that's watching this, that you will not be paralyzed as Kirk has said, but be moved to get educated so you can make an informed decision that is the best for you and your family. And so thank you so much. I look forward to having you, Kirk, on again as the world turns and as things get all excited, and we are getting better and better prepared for what's coming. But we're in this together, and I just really want to say thank you for your time, your expertise, and your heart to serve and to help all of us. So thank you so much.
You bet, my pleasure.
Thank you, Kirk. God bless you.